much, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here with you this evening. Just for the record, my hometown is Palestine, not Palestine. I get in trouble at home. Palestine's a little bit farther to the east than what Palestine is. But it's an honor to be here with you. I did begin public service on the Palestine City Council. I was 25 years old. My high school ag teacher called me on a Saturday morning. I think there's 6 good days to work. I was at my office that morning and trying to get a real estate business going. And he said, "We want you to run for city council." And I said, "Thanks, but no thanks. You know, I'm trying to get a business going. I'm trying to get a family going." And he got quiet on the phone, and I'll never forget what he told me. He said, "We gave to you. It's time for you to give back." So I told him what all former FFA members tell their high school ag teachers. I said, "Yes, sir." And I kind of think we all need to give back. We all need to be serving. We all need to be working for a better America. And I appreciate the Tea Parties across the nation who have sent the signal that we're going to take our country back. And you did that. You did it in very clear terms, and you sent a strong message of accountability, a strong message of transparency, and a strong message that if you send someone to work for you, you expect them to do what they campaigned on doing. Isn't it refreshing that Ted Cruz filed the bill to repeal Obamacare like he said he was going to? I mean, that's what we need to happen. It's an honor to see Randy Weber here tonight. Randy, thank you for your service. Randy was up early at a meeting. I was in D.C. a few weeks ago and saw him working hard on your behalf. I got to watch him serve as a member of the Texas legislature. And thanks for carrying the Texas fight to Washington, Randy. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. You know, my first session as a member of the Texas Senate, I was a freshman. And the House and Senate are different places. It's weird, but it is. And I was on the Senate Education Committee, and we had a senator that was pushing a bill, and I kept voting against his bill. And I was like the only guy in there voting no. And he came up to me and said, "You need to vote for my bill." And I said, "Well, Senator, when I campaigned, people asked me my opinion on this bill, and it wasn't a real big thing in my mind, but to my constituents it was, and they wanted me to be for their issues, so I said, I'm with you." And so I campaigned that way. I want to vote that way. And he said, "Well, you're here now. You need to get along with members of the Senate." I'm not kidding you. That's a true story. And I said, "Thank you, but I'm going to get along with the folks back home that sent me here to represent their interests and do what I said I was going to do." People get confused sometimes about what it's all about, and that's a real tragedy. But you're reminding them, and that's the good thing about America. I believe in a strong nation. I believe in a strong state. And I believe that we need to be doing things at the state level much more than is going on in Washington if we're going to turn this country around. You have reminded people that you can only spend what you bring in. And we have nations all across the world right now that are crippled and are struggling that don't seem to understand it, and Washington isn't getting it. This administration is certainly not, but thank you for reminding them that. I can't wait to come back and have a vigorous and robust debate about who I think ought to be the next lieutenant governor of the state of Texas. I'm excited about that opportunity to talk about the issues that are important to our state, what my position has been on those issues, what my position is on new issues. I'm proud that when I was a member of the Texas House and Senate, I was consistently ranked in the top conservatives in both chambers. That's important to me because I believe in a limited government and conservative philosophy. And I'm proud as Commissioner of Agriculture that I've always given money back, always approaching over $20 million now since each of the sessions that I've been there. I think that's what agencies ought to do, not go ask for more money, but find ways to spend less money. And when I think about these issues, and I want to get on what I came to talk about tonight, because it's very important and it's a huge issue for our nation. I want the Texas of tomorrow not to look like the Illinois of today or the Michigan of today. And I think the way that we do that is about transparency and about accountability, and you bring that to the table. So we're going to have fun doing that, and I look forward to coming back. And what's the date? October 3rd. You sure? Robert told me earlier it was the 23rd, and I said, man, that's what we did to Democrats back in East Texas. We'd tell them Election Day is Wednesday, and we all showed up on Tuesday. I thought I was getting short-sheeted there, but it was an honest mistake. We'll get it straightened out. October 3rd, Blaine, be sure and write that down, because I do want to come back and have that debate. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a very, very serious issue. In East Texas, when I grew up, Democrats and Republicans would fight about things. It was never about having a strong law enforcement, because we found other things to fight about besides that. And so it was frustrating to me, and so that's why I got involved in this issue. And I've got a PowerPoint that I want to run you through real quickly and kind of describe to you the border security aspect of it and tell you what I think some solutions are. I kind of think if there's problems, you expect elected officials to talk about solutions. And then we need to get together on what those solutions are and how we can fix it. These red arrows reflect drug traffic and drug trade coming from all parts of the world and ending up into all places all across the United States of America. Texas has 2/3 of our entire southern border. This is not just a Texas problem. It is a national security breach. That's what's taking place. This is a ranch manager's pickup truck in Webb County. We want some Texas-sized water, not any Rubio-sized water here tonight. He was traveling across the ranch on a Sunday afternoon. You can see the multiple bullet impacts there. You ever heard of the Eagle Ford Shale? It's kind of a good thing for Texas. He thought it was oil field workers that were just lost. So he turned his pickup toward them, and when he did, he started receiving gunfire. And the way that he escaped and protected his own life, he reached behind his pickup seat and he started returning fire. And they turned, and I'm ready to tell you, they turned tail and went the other direction when he did that. You meet force with a greater force and let them know you're willing to fight, and they'll turn the other way. Now, I heard a joke the other day, this week, a couple of days ago. President Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security was asked about the 2016 presidential race and her intentions. Her response, I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit, I'm too busy securing the border than to worry about presidential politics. Now, why I got pretty tickled over that, I'm here to tell you our landowners are not laughing, because when they hear the Secretary of Homeland Security, they hear the Director of ICE making these kinds of statements, that only emboldens the drug cartels and empowers their activities, that leaves our landowners vulnerable, and it's totally unacceptable. The CBP field director is quoting, right? I wish I had I probably do. I do. Shining on you. You're good, Robert. Federal Bureau of Investigation's FBI Uniform Crime Report. He's citing that as saying we have the safest cities in America. Now, the FBI UCI report looks at 8 major crimes. That's what it does. Look what the FBI's own website says in regard to this data. Over here, these rankings lead to simplistic or incomplete analysis that often create misleading perceptions, adversely affecting cities and counties along with their residents. They say you can't use that as a measure of law enforcement effectiveness because it really didn't reflect a true picture. Now, I was kind of, you heard my ag background. I was raised on a farm, and I was taught you use the proper tool for the proper job, and if you don't use the proper tool, what happens to you? You end up hurting yourself or those that you're working with. They end up hurting us by citing these statistics that are not a true reflection. UCR data does not track the following crimes. There's one correction. It does track this one. I saw that when I saw it up here. But it does not track drug trafficking, human trafficking. It does not track kidnapping. What do you think the cartels are doing on a daily basis if they're not laundering drugs? The Houston Chronicle had an article a few months ago about a big money laundering scheme that they shut down. So these types of activities are not included in the FBI UCR data, again, with that one exception. Like I said, I felt like people would listen to Texas farmers and ranchers, but they weren't. So what I did was retain the services, along with DPS, of retired Major General Bob Scales, former commandant of the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, highly decorated military serviceman that served our nation. And this, you see the number of stars on that lapel? That's retired 4-star General Barry McCaffrey. And in order to make certain that it wouldn't be subject to criticism from powers in Washington, Scales is on Fox News a lot. He's on MSNBC, and I don't watch that channel too often. But I thought, you know, I want 2 generals, 2 of our nation's top retired military senior professionals to give us their opinion about what's going on. Give us the facts, call balls and strikes. We'll make our own decisions. So they did. They said all of these things, that the drug cartels are seeking to gain a foothold into our nation. They're infiltrating our gangs. And we went and had a hearing in Washington, and they were rebuffed and ridiculed for what their professional opinion was about the situation. So we launched Protect Your Texas Border, which is a website that tells stories from farmers and ranchers that live along the border and raise their families, so they could tell it in their own words, and we wouldn't have to rely on media distorting what we know to be the truth. And it's still up today. We have a Texas traffic series where you can see the videos of farmers and ranchers telling it in their own story. Now, I'm here to tell you that the men and women who are fighting to protect us are doing a good job. We've got local law enforcement, we've got state law enforcement, and we've got some very brave men and women in federal law enforcement agencies that are putting it on the line on our behalf. And we know that some of them have lost their lives fighting for us. But you know what? Cartel profits, the trade is $40 billion a year industry, and we're outmanned and outgunned. That is the simple reality of what's taking place. The latest estimate of operational control of our southern border is 44%. GAO doesn't even talk about this anymore because they get beat up over it, so they haven't issued any updates in about a year and a half. Now, operational control at 44%, you need to think about that, what averages are, right? You put your one foot in cold water and 1 foot in hot water, and are you comfortable? No. And in Texas, I'm here to tell you, it is far from 44% when you look down in these areas right here. I normally only talk about what's going on our side because we know things are bad in Mexico, from the drug cartels, the 60,000 lives that have been lost, and it's a tragic situation. But I have to share this data with you because I think it paints the picture of how vulnerable we are. Now, since 2007, almost half of the cartel-related homicides that have occurred in Mexico, in the entire country, have occurred in the 6 states that border the United States of America. Almost half of them, 6 states. Of those, 90% have occurred in 2012 bordering Texas. Folks, they're not fighting over a hilltop view or a nice place to put their home. They're fighting for routes inside the United States of America. I think this estimate is right. I need to get it verified, Blaine. I think that of the Texas southern border, 93% of our entire 1,200 miles, 1,241 miles, is unincorporated, and it's largely rural. So you have wide open spaces where this is occurring. That's a simple fact. Here is the most recent data from our federal government, from the Customs and Border Patrol. In 2012, CBP agents seized 1.7 million pounds of drugs in Texas, ladies and gentlemen. 40% of all drug seizures in the United States of America that CBP seized was in Texas. 270,000 pounds more than in California, Arizona, and New Mexico combined. 172,000 people were apprehended in Texas last year. That's about half of our nation's total apprehended in Texas. Does it sound like the border's safer than ever to you? Get this, in the Rio Grande Valley sector, which runs from Brownsville to just west of McAllen, I think. In that sector last year, over half of the people that were apprehended were from countries other than Mexico. Does that sound like a safe border to you? We know people have been apprehended from countries and nations that harbor terrorism or seek to do us harm. They're not our friends, and they have an open gateway, and they're emboldened when our federal government says the border is safer than ever. Now, technology is a good thing, even simple technology. Anybody ever used a game camera, been deer hunting? It's fun to do. You know what's coming in. These are modified game camera pictures that have been equipped with a cell phone, and our Department of Public Safety has put this. We got them in contact with a bunch of different landowners in strategic places, and in 10 months' time, with just 250 or so cameras, they had over 3,900 apprehensions and 10 tons of narcotics were seized. Now, is that a safe border? We got 1,241 miles, you got 250 cameras, and game cameras are like a snapshot right there. They don't give you the big broad area in view. But that's what's going on. Now, you as Texas taxpayers have spent almost, or will through the end of, I think, this next biennium, almost $500 million. $500 million doing what is a federal government's responsibility. There's a big argument today about what is the federal government's responsibility. It's not ambiguous in Article 4, Section 4 of our United States Constitution that says it's our federal government's responsibility to defend us from invasion, and I don't know what else you'd call that but invasion. Now, I asked a group here a little while ago, I said, in 1933, the Chicago Crime Commission named Al Capone public enemy number one. And before I showed this slide, I said, who's public enemy number one today? And a lady yelled out, Obama. So I couldn't argue with her. But I thought I'd just flip onto this screen anyway, just in case you're tonight. El Chapo Guzman is the kingpin of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, and yet the Chicago Crime Commission has named him public enemy number one. Why? Because of the drugs that he is moving into the central United States because of the expansive transportation system that's there. That is the reality that's going on, and it wasn't Texans that did it. It was the Chicago Crime Commission. Now, who else is from Chicago, Illinois? Yeah, there you go. Now, this is a picture from the New York Times. They're a real strong conservative paper, right? That's a picture of a Texas rancher. He's getting his pistol with him before he goes out to his ranch. Now, the reality is, in the rural, remote regions of Texas, many times the best 911 is a 308 because you have to defend yourself because of the response time. And if the president is successful, he will make our landowners defenseless because the bad guys are not going to comply with his law. I hate to tell him this, but it's the reality. And so that's why maintaining and preserving our Second Amendment rights is so important so that we can defend ourselves. All right. So the reason that I'm here tonight is because we've got to have change. And we've got to talk about solutions. And I got tired of all the liberal media and the liberal members of Congress beating us up. So I wanted to write a book about it. And I wrote this book called Broken Borders, Broken Promises. We have copies back there tonight. I'm not keeping any of the net proceeds after our cost. I'm donating them to causes to secure our border. We got to sell some first. But I'm giving these to y'all. If you want them, you just take one. Because I think it's so important that we get this message out there. And you can order them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. If you don't like what's in it, I hope you like the cover. My wife drew the Statue of Liberty. I told the publisher my wife drew a picture and I want to use that on the cover. And I was talking to the president of the company. He said, we've got artists, that's fine. And I said, look, you don't have to use it, but you got to consider it. And thankfully he did. But here's where we're at. Mexico is the #1 trading partner of the state of Texas, a very valuable trading partner. Billions of dollars in trade, thousands of jobs have been created because of the trade. In agriculture, I'm here to tell you, folks, 96% of the world's consumers live outside the borders of the United States of America. I want access to those markets, but I don't want to yield our sovereignty to get that. And so we have a terrible situation. And I was in the DPS helicopter in the middle of the night, and I was as an observer. We were looking through a FLIR camera about the size of that laptop. I was getting motion sickness as we were going around. I'm a white-knuckle flyer, I got to tell you. And we were identifying individuals on the ground below, and we were dispatching agents toward those individuals. And as we were doing that, it's the pitch black, dark at night, and I'm in that helicopter, motion sick, looking at it all, thinking, we don't know if we're dispatching our agents to go after a heavily armed drug cartel member ready to do battle, or we're sending them after someone that has entered our country unlawfully, but they're otherwise looking for a job. Now, you remember one of the slides I told you 172,000 people were apprehended in Texas last fiscal year? 365,000 were apprehended in the nation trying to come in unlawfully, illegally. 350-something thousand was right here in the southern border region. Estimates are as high as 75% are not apprehended. Now, I am an Aggie, so I have to work on my math. But if you don't apprehend 75%, and you do apprehend 365,000, the math says about 1,400,000 to 1,500,000 were coming through. You're paying for 18,500 Border Patrol agents on the southern border today. How many work days are there in a year? 208, they say. I think that's way too few. My dad was really happiest when we were coming back from a vacation so he could go back to work. That's right. I think it's about 208 work days. That doesn't leave your border protected, folks. It doesn't. And yet, you can see they're apprehending a lot of people. I met with a sheriff. I want him to say this publicly in a Texas border county a couple of weeks ago, and he said that when the drug cartels are trying to move in drugs now, they send a group of people looking for jobs in one part of the county. They call the law enforcement officers and say, people are trying to come across my property. You got to come out here right now and get them. All the law enforcement goes there, and then the drug cartel guys whistle right across our border. It's happening every day, or you wouldn't have a $40 billion annual drug trade taking place. And I bring this up because Washington seems to be struggling to find the right answer, and that's not unusual for us. We recognize they struggle and quite frequently do not find the right answer. And so it's a frustrating process for us. I want a secure border. I can also tell you, Texans know about the Bracero program, where from the 1940s to the 1960s, you could have people to work for you, and they could come and you could sponsor them, and when they got through working, they went home. And they didn't have to die in South Texas trying to sneak in looking for a job. There's been over 600 bodies, almost 600 bodies in the last few years in the southern region of Texas of people that have just been trying to come in and look for a job. But we had that Bracero program. Guess who ended the Bracero program? United Farm Workers and Lyndon Johnson. You got it. And do y'all believe in our free market enterprise system like I do? Absolutely. I tell you, man, the free market works. And guess what? The free market works even in spite of government regulations. Because what we have here is a system where our government has denied access to a workforce to an economy that's demanding one. And people might say, well, Americans can fill those jobs, and I strongly believe that too. Any American that wants a job should be first in line to get that job. But folks, the lines aren't forming. California strawberries have rotted in the fields. Washington apples have fallen to the ground, and nobody's relocating to the Rio Grande Valley to pick the best grapefruit in the world, Texas red grapefruit. It's in season. You need to go buy some tonight. People might say, well, pay them more, and you'll get more. Agriculture's paying pretty good right now. I met with a contractor in Houston several months ago, and he said he could hire 200 more people right now if the workforce was available. And I said, well, mister, Some might say if you'd pay more, you'd get all the workers you need. And he pushed back from his desk and hopped up. He said, I'm subject to the Davis-Bacon Act. I've got to pay the prevailing wage in whatever market that I'm in. Now, I bring this up because I think there's two things that are kind of inhibiting reform. You know, it's been 2 decades we've been needing this. One is organized labor. You'll notice in some of the deals that's been going on, they want to have artificial caps for the number of visas to come in. You know what? Those caps are so artificial. All it's going to do is create another shadow economy. And my message, Congressman, no deal is better than a bad deal. I think that's, and I know you share that philosophy. And so we've got to have, and the reason I say that is because if we have a legal mechanism for people to respond to the demands of the United States economy, the best the world's ever seen, then people will be coming in legally, be going home when their job is finished, they can come back, go forward, and then our Border Patrol and agents can target the bad guys. Let's categorize them as terrorist organizations. Let's put them out of business, go after their pocketbook. That's what we need to do. And my thought is, let's go after the drug cartels with bullets and badges. Let's manage our workforce with pencil and paper. I mean, if you don't want an expansive government, and you know, we think, well, what are we going to do with 12 million people that are here? If we couldn't stop them trying to come in, how are we going to stop them now? And if you say, well, we got to round them up and send them home, I want to ask you this: how big of a government do you want that can round up 12 to 20 million people, or who knows what the right number is? But we can't make the same mistakes that our great president, Ronald Reagan, did in 1986. I went to Ronald Reagan's first inaugural parade. It was a great experience. It's a reason that I'm a Republican today. Him and a friend of mine from South Texas who grew up in South Texas politics, and he was a Republican. Because there are better ways, but they made mistakes in '86. We can't make those same mistakes. So I talk about in the book about 6 steps for reform. It starts with a secure border. Border security, though, one of the things that I'm concerned about in Congress, and Randy and I, Congressman Weber and I have talked about, that in order to secure our border, you got to limit the people that you're trying to go after with your law enforcement. Because if you got a million plus people, and most of them are looking for jobs, you can't have enough people. And some people might say militarize the border. I don't want it to come to that. I was in Iraq in 2008 as trying to rebuild that country, and I'm telling you, a militarized economy, your rights go out the window and military tramples on yours. And I don't want that for our nation, and we don't have to have that if we get serious about addressing an antiquated 20th century guest worker program and replacing it with modern ways. Securing the border, enforcing our employment laws that we have is very, very important that we do that. And when we do that, you have to reform our failed visa program so you can meet the workforce needs of your economy. We export a lot of things. I don't want to export jobs. And markets work. Markets work. If we don't have workforce, people go elsewhere with their jobs. In 1980, we imported 13% of our fresh fruits and vegetables as a nation. By 2010, we're importing 34% of our fresh fruits and vegetables as a nation. So that's a reality of those numbers. We have to document all those that are here. We have to have a penalty, not a pardon, for people that violated our law. We understand that. That's our system of justice, I think. If you don't excuse those misdeeds and misbehaviors in a way that encourages future misdeeds and misbehavior, you hold people accountable for their action. Punishment today for violating our nation's entry laws is deportation. Not working. So let's find a way to make it work and then have those high standards, and then let's enforce those high standards so that we don't make the mistakes of the past. A lot of people today are focused on citizenship. I want to say this. I want to be pro-legal immigration. I want people that want to be a United States citizen that want to be a part of the American dream. I want people to have the opportunity for upward mobility, to work hard, to be honest, and to live the American dream. I don't think citizenship should be a consolation prize for violating our nation's entry laws. And we have people that are just attempting to have this mass amnesty. So it makes a lot of sense to say, you know what? We get it. We know what the stakes are. But you know what? Let's have some accountability with our changes before we run off and do hasty things. Let's go slow. My kids wanted to start dating when they were 13 and 14, but you know what? They got a whole lifetime to date. They can wait till they're 16. It's fine. If we can't fix this right, we can wait a little bit. We don't have to rush into it because we got to make the right decisions. I want to answer questions that you might have. I've talked longer than I intended to, but you can tell it's a very complex issue, and I've got you first and you second, ma'am, and you right now, though.